So it's a Prius, and it's been having trouble idling. The idle speed is defined around 1,000 RPMs, I think. You can see it's got the idle speed control is complete. It's come up with this learning value. I'm not sure what it means. It started off at 2 point something. It went all the way down to 1.1, and now it's kind of come up to here. It always tries to find a air fuel ratio of around 1. The voltage is always tending to be on the high side, and it's finally resolved to accept an air fuel ratio of about 1.2 something. Earlier, the lung fuel trim was pegged around minus 45, where it would, while driving, it would show the short fuel was around 20, plus 20. For a while, it was saying, okay, forget about the 1,000 RPM, and it was forcing the air fuel ratio to come to about 1. Now it's accepted that it can't do it, but it would, for a while, it was forcing that, and when it did that, the engine fuel, or the engine speed, was around 1,200, and it was really smooth and happy, and it stayed that way for a while. But then it remembered that the idle speed has got to be 1,000, so eventually it pushed this number higher. This came down. The target is still the same, near 1. It came up to this value, and after a long while, it finally said that the idle speed control learning was complete. But the engine's running a little bit chunkier at this RPM than it was when it was at 1,200 RPM, and this was at 1. And I don't think you'll find anywhere that this is a good range for the air fuel sensor, near 5 volts. It's pretty much near the high end of the scale. I think it goes up to 5 volts, and it should be around 3.3, I think. So this will sometimes give a code that it's running rich, which, let's see, this is saying, no, it's not true, because that should be lean, right? And then this is obviously forcing it lean. It's a fuel trim, so it's forcing the fuel negative, so it's forcing it towards very lean. This is detecting lean, but I guess I don't know if this is currently considering this a rich condition or not, but I only get rich codes and misfires. I know that cylinders 3 and 4 are slightly below the minimum compression spec, and then 1 and 2 are right about at the minimum compression spec. Whether this is enough to cause the idling problem, I'm not sure. The car runs pretty good. The only thing is that when you're coming to a stop, sometimes the engine just abruptly will shut off in a kind of violent way, which means that it's trying to go down to idle, but instead it dies. And that's kind of what happens when it's going in this process of trying to learn the idle, and you're just sitting here in maintenance mode, and it'll just keep cycling and trying to find idle, and then it'll die in an aggressive or kind of rough way, and then it'll start back up, and then it'll keep doing that over and over for several minutes. Sometimes I've noticed it'll help find a new value if I press on the accelerator and hold it at different angles for a while and then let it go back to idle, and that'll kind of help it get along in this process of learning the idle speed control. Okay, so it seems like this control, or the learning value, is going up. Maybe that's as the engine warms up. I heard the fan cut on a few minutes ago, so I'm pretty sure it's warmed up, even though I'm not monitoring the coolant temperature. So I've replaced a few things that may or may not have helped. I went ahead and put new injectors in, and I tightened up some of the vacuum fittings, which were the only two that really I think there are. Is the crankcase breathing lines. So one of those was kind of funky, so I fixed it up. I put a new throttle body gasket on because the old one was kind of scruffed up, and you can see it just wasn't good. But I never at that point checked for vacuum leaks by spraying solvent in the engine area, but later I did, and I didn't see any difference. So I don't think there's any vacuum leaks right now. I did run some tests on the throttle position, so the throttle motor and the throttle position sensor, and they seem to be working okay. I changed out the air fuel sensor, mainly because I guess it was doing this. It was showing these high values all the time, but also because the catalyst temperature never got very high. And after I changed out the air fuel sensor and took it on a test drive, the catalyst temperature got up to around 550 degrees C, which was more in line with what I had read. Right now it's settled at a much lower value. So I don't know, it's probably running 50 to 100 degrees C hotter than the other one, but I'm still getting these real high voltages. But I'm just sitting here idling. If I press the accelerator, you see that's dropped a lot. So now it's adjusting, and you got more normal voltages. So this is closer to 1 and 1. close to minus 40 for the fuel trim. So I don't know why that is actually. It thinks it's rich, so it's knocking the fuel trim down now. More happy. So this is more like driving conditions. You see this, it's just the idling that it's really. So I just took my foot off of the accelerator and it hasn't gone back to idle speed yet. It likes to, I think it likes to stay here, and the engine's running a lot smoother around 1200. You got the 1-to-1 around minus 38, 37, 38 total. No misfires now at this RPM. Catalyst temperature's gone up a bit. It seems to be a happy place, but I think eventually it'll say, hey, yeah, it's happy, but that's not the correct idle speed, so it'll force it back to the idle speed, and then it'll become a little bit rougher. And you'll see this air fuel sensor, the voltage will start going back to a unusual and voltage. So it seems to be happening now. It's trying back to the 1000. Now your air fuel sensor's in no man's land. Just shouldn't run this way, but it's forcing the RPM back to 1000. Your air fuel ratio is 1.2 something, even though it would like to be at 1. And you're starting to have some misfires again. I mean, I guess you can't just rule out that, oh, it's the marginal and low compression on the 2 cylinders. But I don't know. It just seems like it could be something else. But I think I've looked at everything so far, and I haven't really found anything else.